another thing I was very curious about was, we saw on the news, people were getting fined for not wearing masks, right? There's a lot of fines associated with breaking quarantine and not wearing a mask. Any idea how much money was collected or how many people were actually charged with this? Because I don't know anyone that was, but that I'm sure that there were people charged with not wearing a mask.
Right, right. I mean, but first of all, for a lot of foreigners, when they first come to Taiwan, they have to understand that Taiwan is a small island. We have 24 million on this 36,000 square kilometers land. So that tells you that we are very crowded. Okay, so the density is very high. So when this pandemic hit, so what Taiwanese people, we have this consensus is we cannot take chances. So the government started to reinforce this pandemic, emergency pandemic regulations, something like that. I forgot the name of this
They weren't
regulation.
fooling around. They weren't cheap fines.
No, not at all. I mean, based on this regulation, I mean, if you're not wearing mask, you could be fined from minimum 3,000 NT up to 15,000 NT. So just to give some of our listeners an idea that in Taiwan, the minimum wages monthly right now is around 24,000 NT. So if you get caught, you got a ticket, and you got fined like 10,000 NT, that would be like half of your paycheck.
Almost half your paycheck to a fine. Yeah. For not wearing a mask.
For not wearing a mask.
Yeah. Are you familiar? I mean, I don't know the facts 100%, but I remember when the pandemic first started, there was 2 kids in Hualien, I believe, that they called $1 million omelet, right? That they broke quarantine and they went to a night market because they were hungry or whatever, and they got caught and they were fined a combined million NT. So for your listeners in North America, that's about 30,000 US dollars.
Right, and I gotta tell you, they are not alone in this, because we got another cases in New Taipei City.
Yeah.
A Taiwanese came back overseas, and then according to the pandemic regulation, he has to stay in-house quarantine for 14 days. But that guy was like, no big deal. I'm just stepping out to get a cigarette, go to 7-Eleven to buy something. Okay, and then what happens is the GPS, okay, track him, leaving his premises. So, and then the police got him, and then he was not at home, so he got fined. But then again, according to this pandemic, it's not like if somebody reported you, the police comes and then give you a ticket right away. The police will talk to you and then advise you that please put on your mask. But after several efforts, several tries of urging you to put on your mask, if you don't follow the rules, and then here is the ticket.
I have firsthand knowledge of that. Just 2 weeks ago, we were on holiday on the East Coast in Chiangong. And I know the beginning of the pandemic and to now, the Taiwan numbers are going down. So people are feeling a little more comfortable, a little more relaxed. I think not everyone's so uptight. And we went to the beach. Well, we're hot and we're carrying all our gear back to the car, which was, parked on the side of the road. But I had my mask in my pocket, right? Because I came out of the water, I put my clothes on, went to the car, and a police car drove by.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they slowed down, and they were very politely, hey, you're not wearing your mask, please make sure you put it on. They could have fined us.
They could have.
They could have fined us, right? We're down to level 2 now, so it's a little less stressful, but he could have fined us and he didn't, which was like, I'm like, yep, you're right. I'll put my mask on.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, you got lucky, but a lot of people how do you call that? Law-abiding citizens, not following the law. Okay. So, you know what? In Taichung City alone, let me see. Okay, after May 28th, like you mentioned in the beginning, okay, the Taiwanese government upped the pandemic level to level 3. So Taichung City alone, after May, has issued 848 tickets not wearing a mask or mask-related violations. So we're talking about Taichung City alone, not all over Taiwan. So, and then with that 848 tickets, the total fine is 10 million something.
Yeah, so $10 million of fines handed out for not wearing a mask.
Not wearing a mask.
And you got to think, well, what does a mask cost? 5 NT, 10 NT a mask at the most? And you're looking at possibly having to pay a fine of $3,000 for it, 3,000 NT. Right. That's a lot of money they raised.
It is.
But
all you have to do is put on the mask, right?
Yeah. That's a very good look at a macro level of this mask pandemic. But what I'd like to talk about is more of a personal level. What it means for different people to wear a mask and why they do it and why they don't. And we were quite lucky that we went out and we got to interview some people.
Right.
We interviewed some local Taiwanese people. And what did we hear? What stood out for you? I know we both did this together. So what stood out for you with the Taiwanese people in their answers to our questions of why you're wearing a mask? Are you comfortable wearing a mask? Do you wear a mask if no one's looking? I will say some people were uncomfortable, right? But once they started talking, we got some pretty good answers.
Okay. Well, to be honest with you, Mark, I mean, when we were doing the interview, when I heard what they say, I'm not that surprised because as a Taiwanese, I know I think most of us, we are on the same page on this. Mm-hmm. This mask wearing thing has become a habit. Okay, it has become a habit and then developed into a consensus for the Taiwanese society. So what I hear a lot is a lot of those young, old, doesn't matter. A lot of them, they would say, well, I mean, all I do is I sacrifice a little bit of myself and then I do it for the greater good. So that's what I heard a lot from those interviewees.
Do you think that there was a little bit of interview bias in that? We stick a microphone in someone's face and say, hey, tell us why you're wearing a mask. They're going to want to say something nice. I'm just playing devil's advocate. Do you think there was a little bit of that involved in there?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't deny it because if you're walking on the street, if someone stick a microphone to you, sure. And then of course you're gonna say something nice and beautiful, right? But we can only assume that's what they think. But when we were talking to them, they had a mask on their face, so